Okay, we're at the Mishnah on the bottom of Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis. Hamoicher Paris l'chaveroi, someone who sells Paris, harei makabel of roi v'tinoifis l'so. He's makabel a quarter of a kav. I shouldn't say a quarter kav of foreign objects for every saw. I think a saw has 6 kavim, so a quarter of a kav is 1/24th. Basically, a little more than 4%. To Einim, when he's buying figs, makabel of eser mitolois lamei. He's makabel 10 wormy figs for 100. There's different things have different normal amounts of impurities. Figs, I seem to remember that figs is a big problem with the bugs, right? They somehow they claim, in spite of the mission, that every fig has bugs in it. Martif shel yayin. If someone buys a whole storage house full of wine barrels, makabel of eser kusasos laveya. He's makabel 10%. 10 out of every 100 should start going bad. Kankanim b'sharon. If he buys these kalim in Sharon, makabel of eser pitosos lameya. He's makabel, again, 1/10 of them will be weakened or bad kalim. So tomorrow Tani Rav Katina Roy v'kidneis l'sa, that we say that you can take a person accepts a quarter. When we say he accepts a quarter of foreign objects in his wheat, it means kidneis. It means often the legumes were planted next to the wheat, and a certain amount of it would get into the wheat. So a person is accepting that. He doesn't mind if like a little bit of his flour has some beans in it, some bean flour. But he doesn't accept dirt. Dirt is unacceptable. In fact, the Bachia Ketusva said, Mishmei de Rabba, in the name of Rabba, if someone goes, if a person has a storehouse, and you figure, I'm going to do him a favor, I'm going to go and take out all the dirt from it. We have this somewhere before. Was it? In Ksubas. The person who did this quote unquote favor has to pay the owner of the warehouse. He has to pay the value of the wheat for the amount of dirt that he took out. Because this owner of the storehouse he had 100 tons of wheat, and you took out 2 tons of dirt, and now he only has 98 tons of wheat to sell. Otherwise, he could have just sold it as is, and there wouldn't have been a problem. So you see that there is no problem with selling selling wheat with dirt in it. So why was it? Why was Rav Katina saying that you're only allowed to sell wheat with an admixture of kidneys and not with dirt? So tomorrow, Roiva Afurios Pachas. I'm sorry. To make chit. Nice way to chit. Kidneys Roiva Afurios Pachas Miraiva. Kidneys, you're allowed up to a quarter. Afurios, less than a quarter. The amount less than a quarter is allowed. Anything more than that, but if it would be a full roiva, it wouldn't be allowed. So Einachanami, there is a limit. You can't have there's a lower limit of how much you can have for dirt. Dirt, you can have less than a roiva, and kidneys, you can have exactly a roiva. It's such a strange thing, and this comes out through the Gemara. Like there's this major distinction between whether you can allow to have exactly a 24th or a mashu less than a 24th. Was in kidneys also, kidneys you're allowed to have one mashahu more than dirt. Someone who sells pears to his friend, chitin mekabel of roiva. Well, if he sells chitin mekabel of roiva, kidney is l'sa. He's mekabel to take a quarter of a kav of kidneys per saw. So if he sells him barley, mekabel of roiva, nishavis l'sa. Then he's mekabel strofa l'sa. Adashim mekabel of roiva afruyis l'sa. And Adashim, if he sells beans, he's mekabel a quarter of a kav of dirt. The Gemara first understands that this brisa is just giving the examples of what's common on each one. But each one, it's just coming to tell you that the din is a quarter, and these are the things that are most common on each one. But each one is interchangeable. They all have a limit of a quarter of a kav. But it's mashma that, not like we said, that the shear for afroirius is less, that the shear for dirt is a mashu less than a quarter of a kav. Zakmar, no. Shani ados and the miakar ikri lahu. Or says no. It's not like that. Each shear is only applicable to that one. So when we say adoshim, you're allowed to have a quarter of a kav, that only applies to adoshim, because adoshim are likely to have more dirt than others. But ein chanami chitin would be less than a quarter of a kav. Why is that? Adoshim miakar akalu. When a person harvests beans, he pulls out the whole plant from the ground, so some dirt comes along. So it's expected there's going to be a little more dirt. Mashenkin wheat, you cut off the wheat, so there's less reason to expect dirt. So a person would be disappointed, would not expect to have that much wheat, and therefore the shear is less than a roiva kav. Maybe let's bring a raya fakert. Let's say this is a raya to Rav Katina, because since there is more reason to see that there is dirt by Adashim, it must be that the shear for dirt is less than a roiva. So no, that you can't bring a raya out. You can't just not ask a kasha. You also can't bring a raya from there. Adashim it's trichale, but we had to tell you the din by Adashim. The sakadachamina given the miakar akbilahu yosef nami lekabel. They had to tell you that it's only up to a roiva that a person is makabel, but not more. But ein chanami, they all have the same rule. Everything the din is that less than or it's possible that we don't hold like Rav Katina, and even everything, both chitin and adashim, up to even a quarter of dirt is allowed. Kamashmala. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says a klal that we're going to say Rav Huna's klal, and then we're going to try to bring rayas and kashas on this klal of Rav Huna's. In Bala Nafis, which Rashbam says, if someone bought wheat with and he says, I'm going to check. I want to see if there's dirt in it. The seller told him, there's no dirt in this wheat. You don't have to worry about it. And he says, okay, I'm going to go check. Menapa is kula. He says if he finds that the amount of dirt exceeds the amount that we said, which according to Rav Katina is a little less than Raiva Akav or whatever, depending on, let's say we're talking about that he found kidneys, it's a Raiva Akav, but he found it exceeded that amount. Once the buyer is going and finding out how much was in there, and he finds that it's more than that amount, he could take out all of it, all of the foreign bodies, and charge they'll either get a refund for what he paid, or the seller has to provide him with more wheat to make up the entire amount. That means, right, we said it has to be 20 It could be up to a 24th of kitnius, for example. So he went in and he found it was a quarter kitnius, or let's say it was instead of a 24th, it was a 12th kitnius. He goes to the buyer. He says, "You have to pay me for a 12th kidney." He goes to the seller and says, "You pay me a 12th of the purchase price because a 12th of this was made up of kidneys, and I was buying wheat. I wasn't buying kidneys." So he said he doesn't stop. We don't say that the seller is entitled to a 24th, and that part he doesn't get compensated for. But rather he has to, once the seller did the wrong thing, as we'll see in the Gemara is going to give two reasons for this. But once he had more than the acceptable amount of foreign bodies, then the buyer is entitled to remove the entire, whatever, all of the foreign bodies and be compensated. So we're in the middle of Tzadi Dalet Amar Aleph by Amar Rav Huna. And we're saying this klal, again, one more time. If someone, we said that we said in the Mishnah that the maximum amount of kitnius you can have when you sell wheat is 1/4 of a kav of kitnius in the chitin per saw, which is 1/24th, 1/4 of a kav of kitnius. So if Huna says if that amount was exceeded, if the buyer went and checked it and he found there was more than that, the seller doesn't get to say, okay, I'm going to leave in 1/4 of a kav because that I'm entitled to, and the rest I'll pay for. Rather, he pays for the whole thing. So some explain this as a din, and some said this as a knas. Amri ladina, some said it was a din, meaning that there's a halachic explanation for it. Mandi of zuzi aperish. When a person buys wheat, he's buying for, let's say he buys 100 bushels of wheat. He intends to get 100 bushels of wheat with 0 kidneys. But because he assumes that he says even if there is a small amount of adoshim in it, it's not worth my effort to go and sift it to find out. You're entitled to sift it, but most people are not going to bother to sift it. It's too much work. But if he knows that it's more than 1/4 of a kav of kidneys, tarach inshi, then a person would sift it. The kivin the tarach bekula. Once he starts sifting, then he wants to get what he's entitled to, which is to have nothing in it at all. So the mechila is not that I'm moichel this amount of kidneys. The mechila is not a mechila, it's just he doesn't want to bother. He can't be bothered to sift through it to take it out. So less than a roiva kav, a person we know would not bother to sift to take it out. However, once he does sift it, he's holding the seller to the letter of the law, which is that he doesn't want to have any kidneys at all. So that's how it's a din. The amila knas, and some say it's a knas on the seller. Ruva roiva shchiach. The idea is that if there's less than a 1/4 of a kav of kidneys, that's normal. That happens all the time. Yoser lo shchiach. But more than that, it's not typical to have piyuda arav. And what must have happened is, since it's not shchiach, it must have been that this seller intentionally mixed it in. And since he did this intentionally, since he was trying to defraud the purchaser by adding in extra kidneys, then we say, then you don't even get the acceptable normal amount that a person is meich. So Gemara, Meisvei. Gemara asks a kasha on this klal of Rav Huna. Kol saw sheyeshba roiva memin acha. Any saw of seeds. Let's say a person is planting pumpkin seeds, and it has mixed into it 1/4 of a kav of wheat seeds. Yimat. You have to reduce the amount of seeds to less than to less than 1/4 of a kav. because otherwise you're going to be chayav and klayim. Klayim says you can't mix together two different types of seeds, two different plants. The way the Rashbam explains it is that you have to make sure not to plant more than a quarter of a kav out of every saw. So Savrua, the roiva the klayim kiyosa mi roiva the hach. We're saying if it has a roiva, you have to reduce it. So that l'chayra means because the roiva is an actual roiva is aser. We had said that up to a roiva legabi, a purchaser, is not allowed. I mean, it is allowed, and for the two reasons that we gave. But up to a roiva of kidneys in chitin is allowed, and more than that is not allowed. So the Gemara is saying that it sounds like from this Mishnah that says a saw that has a roiva, you have to decrease it till it's less than a roiva. It sounds like an actual roiva, legabi klayim is aser. So it has the same status, an exact roiva by klayim has the same status as more than a roiva, legabi the din of selling chitin that has kidneys in it. Katani yimat, and we said that you just have to reduce it to be below the line, to be below the amount that we said is acceptable. That means legabe klayim, we say a quarter of a kav is not acceptable, so you just have to reduce it to get it to be less than that. So that's l'chayr shver and Rav Huna. Rav Huna had said that once you have something that's aser, then you go and you have to reduce it down to zero. But legabe klayim was saying that you just have to reduce it to below the acceptable level. Now, the Rashbam asks the obvious question: how could you compare klayim, the din of klayim, to the din of selling something? The whole idea is that a person is makabel on himself. The whole din of selling something with a Reva Kav depends on what the person is makabel. The person who's buying is makabel. That is no shaykhus to klayim. Klayim is a isser. So he says that the Gemara could have answered that, but the way it answers, the Gemara likes to answer it gave better. So Gemara loy. Roiva de klayim ki roiva de hach. No, the assumption you made is incorrect. You were assuming, since we said that if you have a quarter of a kav of klayim, you reduce that. That means that roiva kav of klayim is aser, just the same way that more than a roiva kav of adoshim, of kidneys, is aser and chita. It's not true. A roiva of klayim is also not aser. You only aser when it's more than a roiva of klayim. But if that's the case, why is it that you have to reduce it to below a roiva? So that's because of klayim is particularly chamodik, ein chanami. It would have been bottle the quarter of a kav, even a full quarter of a kav is bottle. But we say reduce it to a masha who less than a quarter of a kav because klayim is aser in hana. It's very chamradik. Therefore, the chachamim were misaken. You should reduce it below that amount.
So by klayim, if you have less than a reva, even though it's actual klayim, then it's okay, like bottle.
According to this Tanakama of that,
right?
That means it would really be bottle for even a reva. The chachamim misaken make it less than a reva, and then we'll let the din. Then it will certainly be bottle, and it won't even be a issur d'rabbanan. Rabbi Yossi says you have to get rid of it altogether, which seems to be like Rav Huna. So if you'll say that a roiva is a roiva of klayim is aser, the same way more than a roiva of kidneys is aser. If it's similar to more than a roiva of kidneys. Tanakama. The Tanakama says that we don't make him. You just memayed it till it's mutter. We just have to bring it down below the amount that it's aser, and we don't say anything else. But Yesi says we cancel him since he has more than the amount of iser. We say that he has to take away everything. Why should he have to reduce it to nothing? Once he's reduced it to below the shear of, if you say that it was mutter to begin with, why isn't what the Tanakama said that you just reduce it below a roiva? That should be enough. Why does he have to take it out altogether? So tomorrow, he says the reason is not just that the chamu masakin that you should take it below a quarter of a kav, in order that because of the chumrah decline, we want to make a distinction. It's because if the person starts taking out klayim and he leaves some in, it looks like he's planting klayim. We don't want a person to start fiddling with it, but then you see, there's pumpkins growing up in the middle of the wheat after this guy it looks like he put it in. So therefore, the chamum were masakin even a stricter takana than what we mentioned before, according to the Tanakama, of just making sure it's below, a little bit below that amount. We don't want, we sort of say the svara of Rav Huna, that once you're taking off, you take off everything because we don't want it to appear like you're putting klayim. Toshma, Shnaim Shef Kidu Eitzel Echad. Two people who gave money. Reuben and Shimon gave money to Levi to hold. Zeh manav v'zeh masayim. And one of them gave 100, and the other one gave 200. Both Reuben and Shimon are claiming that the 200 was theirs. You Levi gives both Reuben and Shimon, he has 300 in his hands. He gives 200, he gives 100 to each of them. And the rest he holds on to until he could determine who to give it to. So you see, l'chayra, not like Rav Huna. Rav Huna says once someone is not able to be given, or once we have to punish for, we say once someone has to give something back, which in this case is the person who's claiming 200, and he really only is entitled to 100. We don't give anything at all. So why do we say over here that you could give 100 to each? We should say one of these people is lying and he's coming to get 200, so you shouldn't get anything. Just like the Rav Huna said, the Gabi person who claimed who the way that we're going now in the Svara in the Gemara of Rav Huna, that it's a knas because we assume that he added in the kidneys. So let's make the same takana on this guy, that he shouldn't get anything. So tomorrow, over here in this case of the two people who gave money to a third party, each one is certainly entitled to 100. That's indisputable. But over here, we said there's a svara that maybe he mixed it in the first place. So therefore, there's takana to take him that he shouldn't get any benefit from what he did. But over there, he's not benefiting. The person who lied is getting something that he's certainly entitled to. So that's not comparable. Toshmami Seifa. Let's bring a right from the Seifa. I'm Rabbi Yossi came my said Rabbi. Yossi says the guy with this case where two people gave 100, one person gave 100, one gave 200, that we don't give anything back to either of them. Because in that case, if you give 100 to each one, the person doesn't lose anything. He says, I might as well ask for 200. I'll get my 100 back, and I haven't lost anything. So basically says, therefore, you don't give anything to either of them. And that way there'll be pressure on the liar to say, oh, I made a mistake. It was really only 100. So you see, this is coming out like Rav Huna, that we don't give back anything to the liar. So over there certainly is someone who's a Ramite. So therefore, there's a reason to punish. We know someone's a Ramay, then we don't give him anything. Over here, it's a suspicion. Because it's more than a quarter, we suspect him of having mixed it in intentionally, but we don't know that for sure. So therefore, even though Rabbi Yossi would say over there that you don't give anything back, you don't give anything back to the Ramay because he's certainly lying. We don't know who is the liar, but we know there is a liar. Over here, we don't know for sure that there is anyone who did anything wrong at all. So there's no reason to go like Rav Huna and say he doesn't get anything. Tashma, shtar sheyesh by ribis, a star that has ribis in it. Rameya says the borrower doesn't pay even the principal because the star has ribis in it. So you see that, like Rav Huna, that we consider not just the part that's asur, but even the part that was mutter. So come on, over there, writing a star with ribis in it already is an isser of loisasam, that you're not allowed to impose ribis. So he already was over, which is very similar to last, that there certainly is a Ramay, the person certainly did something wrong. Over here, it's not 100%. We suspect that he was cheating by putting in the extra. So therefore, over there, it makes sense that you should cancel him and take away the whole thing, but over here, it doesn't apply. Tashmami safe. We say that the Chacham disagree with Rameir. They say you can be goyva the Karen, just the ribis that can't be taken. So Gemara Hakiyashta Hasam Vadai Karna de Teru. Over there, the Karen is certainly mutter. It's only the ribis that's asa. Hachamiyema de Kula le Rubiar. Over here, it's possible that he put in everything, and that's why Rav Huna would be misaking it over there. So it's not a kash on Rav Huna either. Okay, we're going to stop over here.
Very different, like the exact opposite logic.
Well, but it's exactly the same like we had in the previous thing with the two people who stole. We said the same. There's one, as far as the certainty of there being isser, there's a reason that the case of
I'm saying because first we said that once you write the shtar, it's all usher, and that's why you don't collect the Karen.
Well, so once you write the shtar, there's still an isser ribis.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the Karen is usher. So chamu masak and the usher, you don't even pay the Karen. So the certainty of the quantity are one is more chamer and one is less chamer.
Thank you. Have a good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos.
Shabbos, shkoyach.